Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon from Malaysia. And of course, a very good morning in the UK, and of course, good evening to friends around the globe. Thank you for being here at the first International Partners Lecture Series for 2021, organized by the Department of International Affairs at UITM Global Office. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we have planned quite a number of activities this year, these activities, like the one today called the International Partners Lecture Series, we have also up and coming the Ambassadorial Lecture, student leaders, or what we call the student leaders leadership engagement from ASEAN universities, and many more to come, at least that has been planned for 2021. So do look forward, do join us with our upcoming events. So just a very quick scene setting here. So we have with us this afternoon Associate Professor Dr. Keung, all the way from Northumbria University, and Professor Dr. Hadaria, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Internationalization at UITM, and of course myself, Zainab, as your MC today. So, all right, we're planning that our event, with God willing, everything runs well, and good connectivity, we should be having a good session today. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, to kick off today's event, I shall now invite Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Hadaria Baharun, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Internationalization at UITM Global, to deliver her welcoming remarks. So, Prof. Hada, the screen is all yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainab. Welcome everybody, and could I please, I would like to share a little bit of slides here for my welcoming address. Can you see my slides? Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, yes, Prof.
Okay. In that case, I'll present. Right. Right. Dr. Keung Wook Seo, the Vice President of Korea Institute of Ecological Architecture and Environment, KIEAE, staff of UITM Global, participants of International Partner Lecture Series, ILPS. This is the first one of 2021. I welcome you to UITM. Annyeong Hashimnika, Dr. Keung. I hope I'm saying it correctly. So, our international guest speaker today is a Vice President of the KIEAE, which is the Korea Institute of, this is not engineering, it's actually Ecological Architecture and Environment. He is also, Dr. Keung is also a full-time academic staff in the Department of Architecture and Built Environment at the Northumbria University, Newcastle upon Tyne, United Kingdom. Dr. Keung has practiced architecture in South Korea, in the USA and Malaysia, and has designed many residential buildings. He has published numerous papers and books, mainly on housing and urban form and their transformation. Dr. Keung was in 2018 a principal researcher for the British Council-funded project entitled Incremental SI, Structure and Infill Housing for the Low-Income Population in Malaysia. Currently, Dr. Keung's research focuses on the resilient urban living in the post-pandemic world, and it demonstrates the high relevance of his work to the current situation. After introducing our speaker, I would like to introduce UITM to our participants, because I realize that many of our participants are from outside of UITM and indeed from outside of Malaysia as well. So as a quick introduction, your host for today is University Technology Mara, which is a big university in Malaysia consisting of one main campus here in Shah Alam, 13 state campuses all over Malaysia, 21 satellite campuses. In the whole of the system, there are about 9,000 lecturers and 9,500 administrative staff. Currently, we have close to 170,000 active students being enrolled, and we have graduated well over 700,000 graduates from 27 faculties, and we now have 9 research institutes in UITM. So this is a few most updated bare facts about UITM, updated in January 2021. Our Vice Chancellor is Yang Berbahagia Prof. Emeritus Dato' Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Azrai Kasim. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, I welcome everyone to UITM. And I will be sharing these slides with everyone later if I'll put it on a public domain, just in case you would like to know some of our bare statistics. Now, talking about faculties in UITM, the 27 faculties are listed here. And today we would like to honor the Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying, because through this faculty, we are connected to Dr. Keung. Yeah, where the Faculty of Architecture, in Malay we call it Fakulti Seni Bina Perancangan dan Ukur, FSPU, has been collaborating with the Korean Institute of Ecological Architecture and Environment. So the collaboration between FSPU UITM with KIEAE began in 2017 with the event of Fall Academic Conference in the UITM International Collaborative Seminar with the theme Inclusivity. This is the outcome of the Memorandum of Understanding, which opens the gate of collaboration between UITM and KIEAE on academic and social networking. Later, both institutions co-organized the conference in year 2018 and 2019, which culminated in a number of joint publications in Q1 journals even. So, on this unique occasion today, we have the pleasure of hosting our speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Keung Wook Seo, who will speak on the resilient living in the post-pandemic city towards fine-grained parallelism in architecture and urbanism. Thank you, Dr. Keung, for your time and willingness to share your experience with us today. The topic is indeed very apt and timely with the current pandemic sweeping the globe. This event marks a positive step towards further collaboration between UITM and international partners such as KIEAE to develop strong partnership in academic activities which UITM constantly pursues. I certainly hope that our audience today, from inside and outside of UITM and from outside of Malaysia as well, particularly our UITM students and staff from the Faculty of Architecture, Planning and Surveying, would benefit tremendously and be inspired by Dr. Keung's lecture. Dr. Keung is indeed an individual who could definitely be taken as your role model. We hope that this will lead UITM students and graduates in the direction of a better future through futuristic and global thinking. Global education is the trend now, and as a responsive and responsible institution of higher learning, UITM is set to prepare future graduates to meet new challenges in the 21st century and beyond. Year 2020, and certainly year 2021 as well, will be remembered as a very challenging, volatile year. Since December of 2019, the coronavirus COVID-19 has been affecting 218 countries and territories around the world. It has indeed been a tough year for many, but academics and researchers, we are called upon to be very creative and innovative, adapting to new norms. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically changed the world and left countless people longing for our pre-pandemic ways of life. In the past few months, everybody has been hoping to return to our normal daily activities like before. While we may not have normality yet, we can show our resilience to adopt and adapt to our new norms. The current crisis is unparalleled in its scale in the modern history. However, we have to remain constructive. Well, where the word positive now doesn't have such a rosy connotation anymore, we have to remain constructive and forge ahead for a better and stronger 2021. I am very happy to see many of you this afternoon on this virtual platform, especially now that we have to continue with stricter new normals due to the spike in the COVID-19 cases in Malaysia. I believe that it is appropriate for us to continue collaboratively developing and carrying out sustainable programs and impactful activities to further enhance UITM's presence in the global arena. So my last slide, please allow me to warmly applaud the organizer of this milestone event, especially Dr. Zainab, Muhammad Noor, and the ICTD team led by Dr. Hidayah Husna for bravely and enthusiastically taking on the challenge of carrying out this fully electronic lecture series. Thank you very much. Enjoy the lecture by Dr. Keung.
Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia Professor Hadaria, for the welcoming remarks. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think the time is now for us to hear from Dr. Keung, our distinguished speaker today, and everything about Dr. Keung has been shared, and you're most welcome to look up for his biodata and for further reference. So with that, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, together we put our virtual clap, all right, for Associate Professor Dr. Keung for today's lecture. So Dr. Keung, the screen is all yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Zainab and Professor Hadaria, for the most impressive and honorable introduction I ever heard. So as Professor Hadaria mentioned, UITM and KIEAE has been establishing a really firm relationship, and we are holding a co-venue of conference every year since 2017. My connection to Malaysia goes back to 1996 when I was sent as a very young designer to Kuala Lumpur to help constructing the telecom tower, the bamboo shoot-shaped high-rise building in Kuala Lumpur. So since then, Kuala Lumpur remained my most favorite city. I have been visiting Kuala Lumpur more than 20 times. so the second most visited city after Seoul. So I feel very honored to be invited to UITM. So let me share my screen and start my presentation. How do I? Okay, thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, Dr. Q, yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think I can finish this, the whole presentation in 40 minutes, so we'll see. Okay, as introduced by Professor Hadaria, the title of my presentation today is Resilient Living in the Post-Pandemic City. And the subtitle is Towards Fine-Grained Parallelism in Architecture and Urbanism. What you are looking at in this cover image is the scene I took recently from Newcastle upon Tyne, where I'm living. So on the left side, this is the Pink Lane Bakery. I go to almost every morning to buy some bread, baguette. But what is changing now is people have to line up like this with social distance. So you cannot just cram into the inside of the bakery. So what is so interesting to me was, you know, they have these two doors. As you can see, there's one door here, and there's another door. So this door, what used to be closed, you know, used for the purpose of bringing some so once you go in, you buy the food, then you go around and walk out using the other door. So suddenly, the additional door became a really valuable element of this bakery. So it used to be a redundancy, but now it's really valuable asset. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. On the right, you see the street of Newcastle upon Tyne, and it used to be a 3 lanes. But what is happening is now they try to subdivide, you know, split the equal lanes. So what is happening? This is for the bike only, and for the pedestrian. So even the pedestrian flow is controlled. This is the way you go to direction, and this is the way you go to that direction. And this is kind of a very fine-grained subdivision of what we have already. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So fine-grained parallelism came from the computing. So in computer science, they use this term to define this. In fine-grained parallelism, a program is broken down to a large number of small tasks. These tasks are assigned individually to many processors. The amount of work associated with the parallel task is low, and the work is evenly distributed among the processors. Hence, fine-grained parallelism facilitates load balancing. I think this is exactly what we can apply to the city planning. So for example, well, the same city structure, but once you fine-grained it, imagine there are 10 people walking towards east. They can use different streets, right? The workflow is distributed, while in this structure, several people have to walk together because there are not many street network redundancy. So fine-graining actually helps distributing and helps the social distancing actually, because our city, you know, we need decrease the density for social distancing, but we cannot stretch our city like this rubber band. This is not possible. So the best thing we can do is multi-layering. So by multi-layering the existing structure or network of the city, we can maximize the utility of it. And this is a really good thing for the pandemic, but also it has a potential to deal with this climate change and all the other urgencies in the contemporary society. Some collection of the data from a lot of the magazines and reports, but I want to highlight a few things. So this working from home environment is now the common issue and the everyday norm now. Many employees said they would like to continue working from home. So only 8% wanted to go back to the office full time. So even after the COVID-19, we cannot go back to the 2 years ago, that old environment. Now things have been completely changed. So working at home, what would be the problem? Work-life balance is very difficult because the domestic environment cannot be changed freely because we have very restricted structure at the moment. So now the broken plans are more adaptable and more favorable. We used to favor this big open plan, but now more partition subdivision is needed because we have to work and live at the same time. And you need a daily routine and you need to rethought about them to maximize the productivity. And the outdoor space is more important ever before. And you need to connect to the rest of the world while you are staying at home. How do we do that? We need to have a big window to look outside to see the people walking. So you need to visually connect it, as well as having some good access to the green space. Now let's move on to the issue of the city. In one keyword, I would define that decentralization is the most needed dimension for the city planning. Now people are shopping closer to home, and the local neighborhood is becoming more attractive and more important than the city centers. So you need multiple local centers rather than one single center. So decentralization delivers another strength, which is resilience. And convenience stores, these small 24-hour open shops are really booming. And that lets people shop little, often, and locally. So in South Korea, for example, in 2019, convenience shops were the only brick-and-mortar shops whose sales grew. So even during the pandemic, they grew. So what about the density issue? People think density is not a good thing, but we need to be careful to define density because this famous urban planner, Jane Jacobs said, the high densities of the dwelling is a good thing, while overcrowding is a bad thing. So we should not confuse. Overcrowding is a bad thing, but high density helps to solve the problem of climate change as well as COVID situation if we are already living in the densely packed city. So if we all live far apart from one another, some people argue that we need to move to the rural area to spread, restrict the spread of the virus. But if we all live far apart from one another, the virus might have been slower, but the vulnerable people could have been left even more vulnerable. So there's a lot of evidences to prove that. So this is the beginning of my main argument today. So I'm going to talk about these hierarchical strategies for the fine-grained parallelism following these 4 hierarchies: the furniture level, and the room level, building level, and the city level, with this increasing order. So I'm going to come back to this issue one by one by looking at the slides together. Let's talk about the furniture level. People think, what is the connection between furniture and the COVID-19? But actually everything is closely linked to our future if we have to deal with pandemic properly. we used to have hundreds and thousands of possible postures, as you can see in this slide. So now it's decreasing. We are not using these postural repertoire anymore because our modern chair, desk, and bed, all those furnitures are really standardized, and you are only using 3 or 4 postures during your daytime, if you can think about it. So this is the reason why people are, eager to the exercise and to do the yoga in the first place, because we are not doing these postures anymore. But if you remember the history of the humankind, we have been using various different the postures inside the house. For example, this is the real image of the Last Supper of Jesus Christ. So the famous version by Leonardo da Vinci, sitting around the table, is completely wrong. This is the actual scene of the Last Supper, because in those days, Romans and Jews were dining in this kind of setting. This is the rediscovered the setting of dining room from Pompeii. And the people used to the reclining like this, and then they were having a dining together, like in this mosaic image. So we are losing these postural potentials. Then how do we gain back those postural potentials? I think there are wisdom we can learn from Asian countries like Malaysia or Indonesia, Japan, Korea. So we've been following the westernized, modernized culture for a long time. But what is needed at the moment is we really need to regain our practice and our wisdom from our traditional houses. For example, this is my parents' house in Seoul, and you see there are Western furnitures like this, dining table, sofa. But in the very kind of a special event like birthday party, we all come down to the floor level and sit like this, and use this kind of a portable low table to celebrate something. So this is more cozy and intimate environment. So actually we are using 2 different levels in the house. There are 2 layers, higher layer and lower layer. We are using both, which is very interesting and unimaginable to the Westerners' eyes. When I deliver this lecture to my English colleagues and students, they are quite stunned to see this potential of spatial use in the same space. This is Japan, using both, the floor level and the furniture level and the scene, and even contemporary architecture designed by Japanese, Malaysian, and Korean architects are actually trying to maximize this potential of using the multiple layers inside the house. Because house is limited, and during the lockdown, you have to stay inside. You need to fine-grain the spatial potential, otherwise you would feel very bored. So the furniture, even in the Western countries, they used to experiment different shapes for this kind of a multiple layering of the setting of the behavior, but they are losing it. So there are even contemporary designers like Zaha Hadid or some other designers try to develop this kind of a multiple way of using it. So this is the meaning of furniture, which can be accommodated inside the house and maximize the fine graining of our everyday living. So let's move on to the hierarchy of room. So this is the Palladian villa, designed by Palladio. And as you can see, there are rooms, but what is so extraordinary is there are so many openings. So each room has multiple doors. So there are many doors around, so people can navigate through. So what is particularly good about this kind of open structure, a sequential or room-to-room enfilade, is that if you do some kind of activity here, you are having a party with your friends, and you have more visitors coming in, and you are lacking the space, and you can spill out You can use the neighboring spaces. So you can continue to do the same activity regardless of the size of the behavior. And in the 17th century, we invented this concept called corridor. At the time, we didn't even have the vocabulary. We didn't have the word corridor, so people used this word, passage. So having a passage, now each room is starting to be separated. So it's still remaining at this stage, but in the 18th century, as you can see, each bedrooms are more independent. We call it privacy, but we are losing this flexibility. So you are here, more people are coming in. There's no way you can expand your current behavior. You have to stop, and maybe you have to move to another house. And this doesn't allow the flexible way of living. So having that kind of concept of flexibility and the easy flow and multiple doors, when I was doing my British Council funded project for the development of affordable housing for the low-income population in Malaysia, I came up with this same concept and designed this house, which is called incremental house. And it was displayed and sent to the Kuala Lumpur City Hall. And what I did was I tried to open up as many openings as possible. And there are 3 components: door, window, and partition. And with exactly the same size and detail. And they are interchangeable. So today you put the door here and you put the partition. You put the window here. I'm sorry. You put a window here. And after a year, you realize you need a door here, and you swap the door, and you put the partition here. So you can control the connection in a multiple way. Another aspect of this incremental housing is we start to build this bare skeleton of concrete structure first, so that people can come in and start living with a minimum amount of interior fit out. And this, left out space can be used as a yard to grow the herbs and grow chickens for the household income. And then gradually, when they have more income, they can actually expand the house to make it a fully grown house. And I suggested perhaps 50 different unit plans, which can be possible out of this same initial structure. So regarding the room level, we don't need a fixed and shallow layout, but we need a flexible and sequenced layout. And what is more important is you need an outdoor space evermore, and you need a new entrance hall. In the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak gave rise to the entry powder room. So it became a kind of a norm in Europe, this powder room to wash your hands. But this is more strengthened because due to this COVID-19. And also we need a home office. But if you think about these 3 important issues, after the pandemic, outdoor space, new entrance hall, home office, they should be positioned on the outer periphery of the house because you need a ventilation and sunlight, right? Or even the outside view. So I coined this term as elaborated boundary. So anybody designing a house or home, you really need to think about this elaborated boundary or thick boundary. Now let's move to the second issue of the building level, third issue. Well, we used to have this centralized access and circulation, but now we need this distributed access and circulation. So especially in Asian countries like Kuala Lumpur or Seoul, Tokyo, we are building a high-rise building like this. High-rise buildings, you have an elevator, which is going up and down. And there are hundreds of people living. And even COVID-19, how come we can deal with this distribution of the people's flow? You have to take this elevator going up and down. Otherwise, it's too far away to walk up and walk down this high rise. So it's much better in terms of pandemic. You lower the height of the building, and then you make many elevators distributed. And the best thing is you can walk up and down. So low-rise, high-density can work much better to deal with this kind of pandemic. This is one good example from Vienna, Austria. You can see this is a social housing. This is not an expensive villa, but they try to equip these multiple bridges. So there are so many bridges connecting these buildings. This is the concept. This is the concept model. And because you have this multiple connection, you can call it fine-grained the structure of the navigation. And they even have this kind of a communal space in the middle of the building, not just on the ground level. And this connection helps to people to move around and associate to each other. And also during pandemic, you can actually control the flow to avoid the spread of the virus. A similar logic can be seen in this example, also from Vienna, Austria. So you have this multiple connection between buildings for the choice of navigation. And these corridors and navigation really helps you distribute, and you don't have to rely on a single, the vertical circulation core. So to talk about the city, well, to achieve this fine-grained urban structure, we need these 6 strategies. So the smaller block and mixed use and high density, mid-low rise, and street facing and mixed tenure. These 6 strategies are not something totally new. It has been discussed since 1950s and 60s by many renowned authors and planners and designers worldwide, including Jane Jacobs, Kevin Lynch, and many others. So there are thousands of the papers and the reports and the experiments to prove that these 6 strategy works really fine and works well to benefit the walkable environment for the low carbon footprint. But at the same time, even during pandemic, this really helps us to survive because these 6 concepts allow the clusterization. So that is exactly the concept of decentralization. So you don't have to travel a long distance to the center of the city to buy or to meet somebody or to work. So you can actually do all the things possible you need to do within the boundary of your area. So having this fine-grained urban structure, what is possible is the network-based urban dwelling. So your house is not a single unit anymore, but you can rely on each other, so between the multiple houses. And there's a developing concept of co-housing out of it. But at the same time, if you have this fine-grained urban structure, you can procure, you can buy, and you can interact with an urban resources very quickly and easily. So this is one good example I taken from Neckarbroggen residential development in Heilbronn, a small city in Germany. So I visited this the city 2 years ago, and this is a new development. They exactly follow those 6 strategies I outlined here. So each block is very small, but at the same time, each block contains all the imaginable functions. So you can live as a single person and as an older person with a big family. There are a variety of choices for the different types of family. But at the same time, there's a kindergarten, there's the elderly care facility, restaurants, and office, and so many different things. And if you're living inside one building, for example, you have your own laundry machine. But at the same time, if you come down to the ground level, you find this kind of communal laundry room. So if you need a bigger laundry machine, you come down to the floor level, and they developed this application where you can check the status of the machines on the ground level communal laundry room. So if it's occupied, you can actually check, and if it's empty, you can come down and you can do the job at the laundry room. So you have a control of this kind of using the room and to avoid this crowding, and especially during the pandemic. And this is a very walkable environment, so people really enjoy dining out and walking around. So it's one good example you can look at if you are dealing with this climate change, pandemic, social inequality, demographic change, aging, geographic mobility. Another good example from London. So this is the regeneration, refurbishment of the old social housing. So this gray part of the building is the old social housing built from 1960s perhaps. And while they redeveloped this old social housing, well, typically you can think about demolishing the old structure and building a new. But what they did was they actually added the new one. These white buildings are the new addition. And also they, of course, refurbished this old one as well at the same time. So instead of making a high rise, they actually added more, and they made this kind of fine graining of the structure. So as a result, they created these multiple street accesses. You used to have just one big open space in the middle, but now they develop this multiple, entrances of the site, so which enables the, choices of navigation, and people can really enjoy living in the street environment. And there are so many leisure, retail, communal facilities on the ground level. Well, many people, many experts, planners, designers, stakeholders in Asian countries, including Korea, Japan, Malaysia, many people argue that we still need a high rise because of the high land price and because of what we have been doing, all sorts of reasons. So if you really should build high, then there's a solution that you can make this kind of a fine graining using the vertical layering. So this is one good example from Singapore. So instead of building high, they try to implant this street environment within it. So this is kind of the roof garden and this kind of the in-between green spaces. So people can quickly and easily come out to the outdoor environment. Then it'll solve the problem. And they also provide this multiple level of flexibility depending on the structure of the household as well. Another good example from Singapore. This is very interesting because you combine this kind of a residence for the elderly people, but at the same time there is the hospital in it, and there are so many other things like a supermarket, and there's the farming area, medical center, communal plaza, even kindergarten is included. So to facilitate this interaction between generations. So what has happened after they built in 2017 was some younger families come to this complex and let their kids go to the kindergarten, and then they meet their parents in the elderly care housing. So because of they combine these multiple functions together, they have this increased number of visitors to their elderly people living. This is one good way of not isolating them. Okay, so this kind of graining or fine graining of the urban structure allows this network-based urban dwelling, as I mentioned before. So co-housing is a good example. And these graphics show the facilitators, which will bring this co-housing, sharing economy type of environment more quickly. So we have a lot of e-commerce, and we are actually experimenting. There are countries already using this kind of robot delivery. And there are many shops in the US. Amazon Go already are doing this, the shopping environment without cashier. So you don't have to pay using the credit card. You just go in and go out without doing anything. Another example in South Korea, the auto convenience shop. So there are so many cameras and the digital devices checking what kind of item you are picking up. And then you just walk out, and it's automatically paid through the system. And we need a lot of 24-hour opening shops nearby, the smaller version of it. And now it's coming really close. This Amazon is delivering the items by drone. And they're even having this kind of a patent that this huge, the balloon is floating above the city, and the drone is actually coming to this balloon to retrieve the item, book or whatever, and then you deliver it to each household. So you don't have to travel far back to the rural plant or warehouse to get the items. So these are really happening at the moment. And this is the RoboMart, which is already happening now. It's a kind of a bigger vehicle containing all the groceries and food. And without the driver, it'll come to your door and you just pick it up. So this is all happening, and this is what we will be seeing in everyday life in the next 10 years. So this will actually enable this kind of a more urbanized dwelling. So when we talk about this network-based urban dwelling, so what could be the future? Because we remove the home functions, which are superfluous, so we can live lighter and smaller, more flexible. That is actually a good thing for the low carbon footprint. And infrequent or temporary home functions can be shared and serviced or outsourced. This is about the shared economy. So somebody, the IKEA has this Case 10 group doing a kind of intensive research about co-housing, because IKEA is now thinking the co-housing is the next biggest thing that will happen in the next 10 to 20 years because of the demographic change and aging and all sorts of reasons. So the manager of the developer said, our concept of home is changing away from the idea of ownership to seeing it as a service, like many digital platforms have allowed us to do with music, media, cars. So if we think about the Netflix, Amazon service, and the Spotify and everything, it's a platform-based one. And this is exactly what can happen to the housing business as well. Okay. There is a growing issue around the world about this aging problem. So what is so striking is, if you look at this table, location of COVID-19 deaths, this is the Scotland statistics, but this red area, yellow area is the deaths from care home. So across the Europe, between 40% and 50% of deaths came out of care home. So half the people are dying from care home. So now people are beginning to realize that having this more, big institutionalized version of care or nursing home is not a good idea, especially when we have to deal with pandemic. So we now need a smaller version of decentralized, non-institutionalized version of care home. But the best thing that can happen is we let the older people live longer inside the city, because there are tons of research proving that the losing the privacy while you are living in the care facility is really detrimental, and that actually shortens your life expectancy. And many research suggest that urban living actually can support better in terms of your health than living in the rural area. So this is all the reason I am still insisting that we need a city, compact city, more density. We cannot avoid density, even after the pandemic. And this kind of social relationship really improves health not just the civilization. And this reason also supports that we need this kind of urban environment with some proper density for the older people and younger people for all generations. One good example from Spain, where you have this combined residence between older people and younger people. And this example actually is spreading across the Europe. So this the photo you can see is the one from the Humanitas, very famous example from Netherlands, where the students can live for free, and you know, the one responsibility for them is spending time several hours a week with these the elderly residents, and helping them to figuring out something, check their health. And similar example from Spain, where you have the reduced amount of rent if you live and have some association with the elderly people. Somebody even suggested at the urban level, we can actually facilitate this kind of communication by using this existing built structure. So if you are living alone, you know, as an older person or a single person, you don't have to use some part of your house. It's a kind of a resource which is isolated. But imagine there's a family who would need more rooms. Then actually they can have a connection. And it could be rent, or it could be the mutual exchange of the values for some kind. And they can use this room. So if we live close to each other and you know, with some density, this kind of social relationship and sharing economy, sharing resources become more easier. And well, this group, this architect even suggested, actually we can build a staircase and a corridor inside this built structure to facilitate this. This is radical, but this is something we can think about as a designer and planners. One recent example from South Korea. So this designed my close friend, and this looks like a typical one-room housing, we call it. So one person live inside this unit, another person live there, and as you can expect, they have a very tight, compact kitchenette and the bathroom. So this is very functional. You have a very limited space in it. However, if you walk down to the ground level and underground level, you find this cozy bathroom, like a spa. So that's the photo of the spa. Sorry. So, you know, if we live tight as a single person in this kind of shared housing, what you are losing is the luxury and the leisure. And this can be actually the compensated by having this kind of communal area. So you book this bathroom, and then you can use it for hours, looking at some nice landscape outside. So there's many possible ways you can actually try to compensate the deficiency of the living as a single person or in the co-housing. And this house also facilitates a communication between individuals by having more kind of the wider the corridors and halls. So, you know, rather than making it functional, you find more, you know, fine-grained, smaller bits of spaces. So this is here. So you can actually communicate, spend time, and there are trees. So you find more hidden spaces, and you can make life really much more wealthier. So this is the final summary of my lecture today. So we need fine graining. So rather than stretching out the city, you know, we don't need to have an urban sprawl anymore. So existing structure can be more refined, re-embellished, you know, fine-grained to find the potential of the more activities. So fine-grained urban structure can generate spatial potentials and behavioral options and choices. This can be achieved through the decentralization and the clusterization based on the livable density. I don't mean to say we should overcrowd the city. Network-based dwelling enables a light and flexible living as opposed to the self-contained closed living. So we mentioned these aspects using these 4 levels of hierarchy and 6 strategies. And we also talk about the relationship between home and urban, how they can be interchangeable. So that was the summary of my lecture today. Thank you so much, and I'm ready to receive any comments and questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Keung, for the very interesting and insightful presentation and sharing of the topic today. I personally learned a lot as a built environment major, and I think it's very interesting to what we practice and what is resilient living is all about. And I'm sure the audience out there can't wait. And we were told that there are already 7 questions in the pigeonhole, and I guess we are ready for the questions then. Okay, Dr. Linda, can we look at the questions now? All right. I'm not sure if Dr. Q can see, but I'll take the opportunity to read the question, the first question there. During pandemic, there are people who are able to work remotely and some cannot. Is this changing a little bit how architects and urban planners are thinking about social environment? Dr. Keung? Are you able to see the question on the screen?
Okay, I just lost my sound connection, so now I gained it back.
All right.
Okay, so I'm seeing the question now. So during pandemic, there are people who are able to work remotely and some cannot. Is this changing a little bit how architects and urban planners are thinking about social environment? There are people working. Yes. Well, working at home has 2 different responses. Some people really like it. There are people who can handle the situation of working on the desk while the family members' keys are running wild behind. Some people really enjoy. There are people who can handle multiple tasks at the same time in the same space. Those people can remain as a home worker. But there are people who cannot do multitasking. So they prefer and concentrate one thing at a time. In that case, they need to find a place where they can have this kind of a devoted space, designated study room. Otherwise, they can prefer to live near the office, closer to it, with a small amount of space, personal space, and they can commute easily and quickly. So there are 2 different strategies any companies and individuals should develop. I don't know if that answers your question, but it depends on your preference and how the companies and the universities can handle this. We don't need 100% commute or 100% working at home, but it can be combined, and it will happen for any business.
Okay, great. I think we move on to the next question. Prof, how does urban planning should consider when it comes to social relationship? Can this be done?
That's very highly abstract question. Give me 10 seconds. How does urban planning should consider when it comes to social relationship? So as I mentioned before, this fine graining is to give multiple options and freedom of choices of navigation, as well as this activity and events happening in any bits of the city space. Social relationship is really important for your health. So you need a programmed encounter, like you go to the school or go to the office, meet your colleagues. That is a programmed encounter. but there is unprogrammed encounter. You are walking to the university, you're walking to the office, and you suddenly meet somebody you knew from 10 years ago, your old friend. That's unexpected. You bump into each other. So this unexpected encounter actually is something we need for the advancement of any civilization technology. That's the whole idea. But city is something that encourages that, and those 6 strategies I outlined, including this high density, is something that encourages this unexpected, unprogrammed encounter. So social relationship is a good thing for your mental health, but also it is important for the benefit of the business and our civilization. So this high density in the city, if well managed and controlled, and if well fine-grained, then actually can encourage the social relationship in a very healthy and beneficial way.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we are not going to rule out social relationships and, with all those factors that were mentioned. All right, we move on to the next question then. Can we zoom in? Yeah. Great day, Mr. Kyung. How would we design a controllable partitions for a studio type house? And what areas should we put in the studio type house?
That's a great question. I've been doing this research about this, open building, flexible housing. That was my old the research subject. Personally, well, I'm not representing the whole, the experts and scholars doing this research on flexible housing. But what I believe now is because of the, carbon footprint. If we think too much about this flexibility using this movable partition, that will increase the initial cost of construction. And you need to develop a lot of details. So this famous example of Schroeder house. You have this kind of the screen, which is folded, unfolded. You need to pay more cost to build that. And you need a rail up and down. So while it provides flexibility for the benefit of this sustainability, longer lifespan of the housing, but you are actually programming it too tight. So what if you lose this kind of functionality of that flexibility? So flexibility is provided, this particular way, but if we should use flexibility in that particular way, that initial cost of investment become, unnecessary. So what I suggest now is how can we, provide the flexibility without having too much initial cost? So that's the reason I developed this incremental housing I showed before. So if you can provide maximum amount of circulation, ring structure of navigation, and multiple doors, and then what is left is you just fill in the gap, these openings, by doors, windows, and partitions. And by simply changing the circulation method, circulation pattern, you can actually maximize the flexibility. That is something really people don't focus, but I believe that is the most affordable, cheapest way of providing flexibility. So if you say, providing a partitions for a studio type housing, I know it's extremely difficult. So what you can do is try to subdivide the space using the smaller version of furnitures and the screening devices like curtain or, the high standing partitioning furniture, for example. But I wouldn't recommend having these controllable partitions. That's too much of a cost. Hope this answers your question.
Moving right along. All right. Now, next one from Hazim. Yeah, that's the question. Is it possible to apply the aforementioned lecture clusterization to a terrace housing?
Wow, that's very creative question. I never got before. Oh, let me think again. Well, I really enjoy this question and answer session. The students of UITM or someone from Indonesia, I don't know, but well, there are so many brilliant minds, so creative, really helpful. Is it possible to apply the mentioned lecture to a terrace house, clusterization? One thing I really like about my terrace house, I'm sitting here in my terrace house, which was built in the 1886. So it's more than 100-year-old house. This is really sustainable. It's still existing because it provides maximum amount of flexibility. It's built with bricks. However, you have a front garden and the back garden. And you have this loft space underneath the roof. So because you have these remaining spaces, you can always expand. You can add more addition. So depending on your lifestyle, you can actually change the environment quickly and easily. So that's how this more than 100-year-old house is still existing. I know there are a popular type of housing, the terrace housing in Malaysia as well. And I see there's a front garden normally used for the parking with a gate. That's what I saw. But because you have a garden, in terms of a pandemic situation, it's a kind of a luxury to have. So you can think about having some vegetation there, expand to provide some kind of the green spaces, for example. So when you say clusterization, I can think about the word I coined, the elaborated boundary. So having this front garden and back garden can provide this thick version of periphery spaces. So clusterization can come if you can equip some kind of separate spaces there or under the roof. And that actually adds more clusterization even inside the house. I'm talking about the one individual house. I'm not sure you're talking about the terrace house cluster as a whole. But as a cluster, terrace house already provide clusterization, divided by the streets in between. So compared to the high-rise flat, terrace housing already provide flexibility and clusterization, which is much beneficial for the pandemic situation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kyung, for the answer. Moving right along. Wow, I thought there were 7 questions. There were more questions coming in now. All right. Okay.
So I should be quicker. Yeah.
Let's look at room decontamination. Can we pick on that question, please? Right. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, how about room decontamination, both surface or air? It helps during a pandemic or post-pandemic?
How about room decontamination, both surface and air? Yes, air quality, indoor air quality is a really important issue, especially during pandemic. Well, there's many regulations. For example, you need to stay at home for longer hours because you have to work at home. So where do you work at home? You need a desk space. There's home office. And home office is naturally positioned or developed around the periphery of the house, as I mentioned, this elaborated boundary. And it should be located nearby the house and nearby the window, because you need a light, ventilation, as well as view outside. Having a view towards the green space is really helping for your mental health. That has been proven, repeatedly by many research papers. But when you say decontamination, the air and surface, well, I should say there are many kind of current reports saying that after pandemic, people are, starting to use these different materials to prevent the remaining viruses on the surface of the material. For example, after the 1917 Spanish flu, the subway, underground train stations, started to develop this wall using the ceramic tile. Before the Spanish flu, they didn't use it quite often. But after the pandemic, now worldwide, people are using this ceramic tile on the surface of these train station and subway station everywhere. It is because it, provides more, antivirus type of behavior. So likewise, even at home, you can think about having some surface material like tiles, especially for those periphery area, to block out those contamination. And also it's much better to provide a bigger window for ventilation, absolutely.
Okay, moving right along. Next question. Okay, that's a question. There's been discussion about retrofitting existing buildings to adjust to the pandemic. Is there something that you can say to us about that?
Retrofitting existing buildings to adjust. Yes, absolutely. Well, do you remember my first slide showing this, bakery having 2 doors? Mm-hmm. So that turned out to be a really jolly good thing for them, unexpectedly. But having known that, now we can actually do it from the beginning. So rather than having just 1 door, classroom, housing, any building, you need a front door and back door. It doesn't not just help this spread of virus, but it really helps to provide multiple options and choices of navigation, Mm-hmm. So having an opening, one more opening doesn't, make you have more, hugely increased amount of initial cost, mm-hmm. Compared to having this kind of movable partition. So having more openings, more windows, you can actually block it, close it, and lock it if necessary. But if you decided to, make an opening from the blank wall after the construction, it'll be a huge amount of construction fee. Yeah. So why don't we try to provide more openings from the beginning, as I mentioned before? So if we have to retrofit, I would rather try to provide more navigation of freedom by having more multiple doors, multiple windows, and multiple zoning. Hope this answers your question.
Okay, I think we'll go to the Singapore. Can we zoom to the Singapore? Yeah. Now, do you think Singapore future urban planning is a good example? Urban planning should come with good resources, ecosystem to reduce the expenses, i.e. the urban farming to reduce the household consumption. Okay, Dr. Q.
Oh, wow. So unexpected. So we have an audience from Singapore. Oh, my God. Yeah. I'm so honored. Thank you for your question. Let me read it again. Singapore future urban planning is a good example. Yeah, there are many good examples in Singapore. Although you are living in a really highly, it's quite a harsh environment. Yeah, just around the equator, in my understanding. So the sun is shining right above your head. It's extremely high, the hot and humid. So that actually facilitated the advancement of many of the building features, which I sometimes took as a good example, as you have seen in my slides. Ecosystem. So not many natural environments around the Singapore, successfully try to implant those natural environments within the complex as the example, which we have seen. So yeah, that's the reason I take those examples in my slides to spread out the message to the world. And another good thing about Singapore is this the public housing. 80% of residents are living in the, I forgot the name, but this public housing, the social housing or public housing. And the one good thing about
Yeah,
Yes,
HDB,
exactly. Yes.
Housing
Yeah,
Development
HDB.
Board. Yeah.
Yes. So once you have this membership, you can use the communal facility in your neighboring complex. So it's not independent, but it's interchangeable. So that's exactly the concept I emphasize of this interchangeability between your housing and the urban resources. And that is actually experimented well in Singapore. The only concern is that the initial cost and the construction is really highly expensive in Singapore. So there's a huge amount of government support, and it is supported by the economy. But if the economy cannot support and government cannot support, it cannot be applied to the other countries. So that is the kind of the limited condition. But it is happening in Singapore. But you need to think about this maintenance cost, this quality control, because it's really high. So, but yeah, in general, I think that you are dealing really well in terms of having this ecosystem of the built environment. Hope this answers your question.
All right. What about this question here? If you can zoom in this question.
Which one?
I will ask them to zoom this question right here, Dr.
Okay.
Linda. Yeah. Here in the middle. Okay. Right. So, Dr. Keung, what do you think to Malaysian types of low-cost, high-density housing with overcrowded people and limited spaces? Can that affect mental health?
Absolutely, that affects mental health. But even without knowing, people are used to live in the small version of houses in many, metropolitan area in Asia. So it is really common aspect, very overcrowded. But my question is, even during this overcrowdedness, how can we, live better? So I didn't show in my slide, but I thought the problem of Malaysian apartments is the space is too limited, and it's detached from the traditional way of living, especially for Malay people. So my incremental housing even suggested that we have this, two separate floors. So in traditional Malaysian house, you have this high level floor and low level floor, right? So I suggested that we actually implant that feature inside the modern apartment flat. And you have two doors. So one door going into the lower level, one door going into the high level. How is that possible? Because you have to use this common staircase in the middle, right? Communal staircase. Mm-hmm. So one staircase landing leads you to the front door, to the lower level of the house. You walk up half the flight, and next landing, you have another back door. Well, that could be front door. That leads you to the upper level, elevated level of the housing. So your house floor is actually following the height of the landing, so that you can have these two different level of the floor. So as we have discussed in the at the level of this hierarchy of furniture, having two different levels already gives you a freedom of having a different activities depending on what level you are. So even within the same space, having two different levels will give you more choices. And this is a part of strategy of fine graining.
Okay.
Hope this answers. Yes.
All right. We're moving on, but unfortunately, this has to be the last question. Of course, we will share the questions, and maybe later, Professor or Dr. Keung can answer. All right, so we're going to pick the last question. Okay, Dr. Linda, the interior design, yeah. Okay, here we go. Does gentrification occur when there is a new development in the city and many people have lost their source of income to continue living due to the pandemic?
Gentrification is not a good thing. And the question says, the gentrification occur when there is a new development in the city. Yes, many people are losing their income. Yeah, that's even more worse in UK, in Europe in general. Well, in terms of gentrification, well, gentrification typically occurs when you concentrate your efforts of development in one particular area or in one particular street. So that's not a good thing. So what we can do best to resolve this problem is, again, decentralization. If you have multiple centers in the city, and even multiple centers of the city have multiple streets, more fine-grained way of developing interesting corners with the beautiful shops and the buildings. If that is widespread, then there's no concentration. Everybody wants to go there. Everybody wants to rent and do the business in that particular street. Then gentrification happens. More expensive housing, and then rents going up. The local business and people are kicked out. So that is a really bad thing, sad thing to happen. But without concentration, by doing this decentralization and clusterization, we can even distribute the danger and risk of gentrification. That's what I can say.
Great, Dr. Kyung. Thank you very much to all those participants out there that have actually posed those questions. They were excellent questions, and it's just that time doesn't permit us to answer all those questions, but keep in mind, we'll forward the questions to Dr. Kyung, and of course, we'll be sharing the answers to questions that have not been answered. Yeah, I think we've done justice to the time allocated for today's event, but there's one thing before we move on to Prof for parting words. We need to quickly show the video from the president that we're not able to show, right? So we'll do that very quickly.
Good afternoon. I'm Professor Kim, Taeyoung Kim, President of KIEA, Korea Institute of Ecological Architecture and Engineering. I'd like to thank UITM staff members for inviting me to the International Partner Lecture Series. KIEAE is an academic institute established 20 years ago for the purpose of tackling the sustainable issues in our built environment for the benefit of healthy human living and ecosystem of the future. Today, we are facing a global environmental crisis that seriously threatens human survival. This includes pandemics, air pollution, global warming, extreme weather, and depletion of various resources all over the world. In response to the demand of the time, scholars and experts from all related fields gathered to establish KIEAE. Now, more than 3,000 members are registered in KIEAE, and 170 companies supported us. KIEAE and UITM have agreed on MOU in 2017, and since then collaborated by exchanging staff members. It has been one of the most successful cases for us to expand our influence globally. I sincerely hope KIEA and UITM would further strengthen the relationship, and I believe this opportunity to participate in the International Partner Lecture Series will be an important momentum for that. I wish a great success of this wonderful event. Thank you.
So there we have it, the words or message from the president. And of course, before we end this session, I will pass very quickly to Professor Hadaria for some parting words, and then we'll move on with a group photo at the very end. Prof. Hada, the screen is all yours. I think the mic has to be unmuted.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Keong, and thank you very much all participants. So I would like to report that at the maximum participation during our 1.5 hours on air, we had registered more than 300 participants. So I think that's quite respectable. Congratulations, Dr. Keong, you have attracted many admirers. And those participants not only came from Malaysia, we have friends from Indonesia, and we also have currently friends from Philippines. And we do have questions from Singapore just now. So I would say that this has been a very successful first event of the year that is organized by UITM Global. So thank you very much, everyone. And I think there will be a parting word from our moderator, but my annyeong to Dr. Keong and to everyone else. Goodbye and have a good evening.
So thank you, Prof. Hada. So once again, so with that, we know it's been a very exciting session. So once again, thank you, Prof. Keong. We look forward to seeing you again in our future series. So to everyone, have a pleasant evening and stay safe. And for Malaysia, tomorrow is a public holiday, so get enough rest, everybody. So with that, we'll end our session today with a group photo. I was told a group photography. Are we ready? So can I invite everyone to put up their best smiles? Do not hide behind the videos. Open your videos. Let's showcase everybody's yeah, there we go. And all the students, all our partners from Indonesia, Malaysia, and also the Philippines. All right. So everyone, please come on board and let's have a group photo here. We'll give a few more minutes to get everyone on board. Okay, Dr. Husna, as usual, are we ready? Give us the cue.
Dr. Z, there are some.
I know there are so many screens to follow, so we're going to be very patient with this. But just keep smiling, everyone. Okay, Dr. Keong, give us your best smile.
Okay, everyone, get ready. 1, 2, smile. One more, 1, 2, smile. Okay, another page.
Wow. Okay.
You have.
2 pages.
Yeah, keep smiling, Prof. Keep smiling, everyone.
Smiling, everyone. Now 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye-bye.
Waalaikumsalam. 안녕하세요. No, 안녕.
고맙습니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.